On October 30th, 2020, Catholic Archbishop Carlo Vigano sent an open letter to President Trump warning him about the New World Order plot and their plans for a great reset, warning him against Pope Francis and about a new virus, COVID-21, that will kick it all off. Shortly after Trump received it, he tweeted the letter to his followers and encouraged everyone to read it, religious and non-religious alike. The accusations in that letter are world-shaking. Does Trump believe them? If true, the things in that letter would change all our lives forever. So is it real or a conspiracy theory? That's what we're talking about today, and we're starting right now. This video is not like any of our others, but I think our viewers need to watch and consider it. And it comes on the heels of our video discussing how the New World Order may have planned the USA election to take over America. And short of the 2 Senate runoffs next month, they achieved their goals. Are these things related? Was the election needed to set up what Vigano talks about in his letter? The link to this other video is down in the description as well. This is the second open letter that Archbishop Vigano has written to President Trump. In June, Vigano wrote another letter which warned Trump that the COVID-19 pandemic and the Black Lives Matter riots were, quote, part of the eternal spiritual struggle between the forces of good and evil. This second letter is much more detailed and scary, and it was distributed worldwide in at least half a dozen languages, confirmed by Yahoo News. This is a real letter. The question is whether the information in it is factual or not. If it's factual, your life and my life changes immediately. Now, Vigano is the Vatican's former ambassador to the United States. He lost his position after being critical of the Pope for covering up child sex crimes within the Catholic Church. In this letter, Vigano calls out the New World Order and calls them the global elite, whom he says want to, quote, subdue all of humanity, imposing coercive measures with which to drastically limit individual freedoms and those of entire populations, end of quote. Essentially, to take over the world with a totalitarian one-world government. The brainchild of this group is something called the Great Reset, which Vigano describes as a health dictatorship. The concept is forgiveness of all national and personal debt and a guaranteed income in exchange for giving up all of your personal property. In other words, it will create a worldwide communist state as a reaction to the pandemic. Vigano continues that tied to this reset will be mandatory vaccinations and a global tracking system. I quote from his letter again, quote, adherence to a program of vaccination against COVID-19 and COVID-21 promoted by Bill Gates with the collaboration of the major pharmaceutical groups. The imposition of the vaccination will be accompanied by the requirement of a health passport and digital ID, with the consequent contact tracing of the population of the entire world. Those who do not accept these measures will be confined in detention camps or placed under house arrest, and all their assets will be confiscated. I mean, wow. In March, we did a video suggesting COVID-19 vaccination programs might involve similar things such as detention for those refusing the vaccine. And guess what? That video was taken down by YouTube. I wondered about that at the time. Had we struck a nerve? Why take that one video down? Also of great interest is that he discusses something called COVID-21. This would be a new virus coming out next year. A second coronavirus. In fact, a made-for-TV movie is coming out on the same theme, COVID-21 lethal virus, based on the idea that in a world struggling to get over the first COVID, a second one hits that is more deadly. Is this movie planned to prepare the population? Now, Bill Gates has been speaking on talk shows about a second virus coming out next year. He suggested bioterrorism as the source, or possibly a mutation of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Now I ask you, why in the world does he suspect that? And why doesn't anyone ask him how he knows in advance about what viruses are coming? Here is a clip of Bill and Melinda Gates discussing the second virus. It is very interesting.
So we'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is will get attention this time. So we'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is will get attention this time. That, I'd say is will get attention this time. That, I'd say is will get attention this time.
Did you notice them smiling at the end of the discussion of the second virus? What kind of demonic influence could make anyone smile about a horrible thing like that? Notice he says that this time the world will take notice, meaning that we really didn't notice the COVID-19 in the same way he had hoped. More on that later. Vigano's discussion of the Pope is also quite interesting. Quote, "As is now clear, the one who occupies the chair of Peter has betrayed his role from the very beginning in order to defend and promote the globalist ideology, supporting the agenda of the deep church who chose him from its ranks." End of quote. So he sees the Pope as part of the problem, as do most of this community as well. It is interesting that in the Pope's last encyclical, or statement, he discussed the need for global debt forgiveness. He seems to be right on board with this globalist plan. But we have to stop here and ask, is Vigano's letter the ramblings of a conspiracy theorist? Or are we looking at our own futures? Let's investigate this a bit. Certainly Trump did not just throw this letter away, but released it in a tweet. Although he isn't the world's most reliable source, it means something. And a simple Google search of the Great Reset takes you to the World Economic Forum. Here is their statement on this effort. There is an urgent need for global stakeholders to cooperate in simultaneously managing the direct consequences of the COVID-19 crisis to improve the state of the world. The World Economic Forum is starting the Great Reset Initiative. Who is the World Economic Forum? It was founded in 1971, is based in Geneva, and is tied to the United Nations. That should tell you something. On its site are a number of articles about what the global Great Reset will look like. Primary are articles on how the USA must submit to global leadership, give up their sovereignty, and give away their economic benefits to the rest of the world. This makes me think, was Trump targeted to lose the election by these people? Why is it so important that the Biden administration pack the Supreme Court? Because the USA is key to what the World Economic Forum sees happening. If their plan is to go forward, there can't be any resistance within the American government. It must act as a coordinated unit to bring this upon the American people and the people of the world. In addition to Vigano's letter, the Canadian Report.ca has leaked a document from the Canadian government about these same things. Now, I have no way of verifying that this is accurate or verifying any of the stuff they report, but since this document speaks of the exact same events as Vigano's letter, it's worth taking a look at. The Canadian document is supposedly from their Parliament's Strategic Planning Committee, steered by none other than Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau. The document provides a timetable of events starting in February 2021 with the release of the new virus, COVID-21, which the powers that be will claim is a mutation of the original COVID-19 and will be much more virulent than its predecessor. Stop right there. How would governments know this is coming if someone wasn't releasing the virus intentionally themselves? So, if that is true, this is incredibly incriminating on the governments of the world and the World Economic Forum. This date, February 2021, is also a very specific claim by this document and easily verifiable. If we don't see a mutated COVID-19 in February or March, a second virus, as Bill Gates has been talking about, well, we can write off this document. However, if one appears, it will be a very eerie coincidence that we have to take very seriously. One that Joe Biden seems to echo in one of his first statements after the election. He said we were to brace ourselves for a very dark winter health-wise. How does he know that? However, let's get on with the timetable of this document. In the second quarter of 2021, the document says all nations of the world will go into a more severe lockdown than they did last year. This will be in response to this new virus. In a world weary from COVID-19, a second worse virus will exhaust the world and kill any resistance to what will follow. The plan is that the lockdowns will lead to a world economic collapse of unprecedented proportions, one that will wipe out everything we have and begin famines all over the globe. Then, in the third quarter of 21, it says that martial law will be declared and that the Great Reset will be undertaken. It will be helpful when the Great Reset happens to have soldiers in the streets. And that Great Reset will be the surrender of all assets by businesses and individuals in exchange for debt forgiveness and a universal income program. That allows everyone to eat and have a roof over their heads, but it's also one that makes everyone an employee of the state. A worldwide communist state. Then those surrendering their assets will be given access to the vaccines against COVID-19 and COVID-21 and a digital health passport. This passport will supposedly offer the vaccinated access to society. They'll be considered safe. They will be excused from the lockdowns. It will allow them to travel and to buy and sell, if you notice that, buy and sell, under a cashless digital currency. Those not surrendering their assets and taking the vaccines will have their assets seized by the empire and will be placed in isolation camps similar to gulags. So, according to the document, by next winter, all of this will be in place and the world will be under the control of an Orwellian, 1984-like, beast-like empire. The similarities between these two documents is frightening. Both talk of a Great Reset, both talk of COVID-21, both talk of isolation gulags. Are they the product of over-imaginative imaginations, or is there an element of truth within them? Personally, I have no idea. If we hadn't just undergone a highly controversial American election in which voter fraud was suspected, I'd completely write it off. If we hadn't just gone through an election where the apparent winning candidate hadn't been talking about changing the basic fabric of checks and balances in the U.S. government by packing the Supreme Court, well, I'd completely write it off. But we did. So I wanted you to see this information so you are aware. If it turns out to be spurious, well, great. Awesome. No one would be happier than me. But I would be irresponsible to not have put this on your radar. But why would the whole world go along with such a plan? Well, one reason is that it will seem like they have nothing to lose. Their assets will appear to be worth nothing. They'll be starving. They have nothing to lose except perhaps their souls. The second reason is we are all being conditioned to accept this sort of totalitarian control. To find out how, well, click right here and see how the COVID-19 pandemic, our sports, our science, our economy, and even our churches are conditioning us. And it's not an accident. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.